Hi, third grade readers. This is Ms. Puziel, and for today's lesson, we are in Module 1, Day 4, and our focus question is, what makes a character interesting? So what we want to do for today's goal is we want to identify the narrator of a realistic fiction story. And today's focus question is, how can I tell who is telling the story, who is the narrator? So we want to be able to identify pronouns that signal point of view, learn about point of view in realistic fiction stories, practice identifying point of view in realistic fiction stories, and write to share point of view from independent reading books. So the passage that we were reading was a realistic fiction story called Marisol McDonald Doesn't Match. Who is the narrator of that story? It is the character or the person that is telling the story. And an author, the person who writes it, chooses a narrator who is going to tell it. So the author can decide to tell the story in different ways. They decide who the narrator will be. They decide what point of view they want to tell the story in. So let's look at this anchor chart to learn about point of view. Point of view is who's telling the story. A story told in first-person point of view has a character in the story as the narrator. Readers learn about other characters from what they say to the narrator. Then there's third-person point of view. The narrator is outside of the story. A story told in third-person point of view has an outside narrator. The narrator can tell the readers all of what the characters are saying, doing, and thinking. So how do you identify who the narrator is in a realistic fiction story? Tip: pay attention to the pronouns the characters use. So first person, the narrator is a character in the story. You might see words like I, we, me, us. In third person point of view, the narrator is outside of the story, and you might see words like she, he, they, them. So we will focus on strategies to figure out the point of view of any fiction story. First, let's look at the parts of a fiction story that will help us with point of view. So here's a good strategy. Read the passage, cross out dialogue, that's spoken words or internal thoughts. Okay? And that's like quotes. We don't want to focus on quotes. Okay, anytime you see something in quotes, that's not what we're focusing on. You want to focus on the pronouns. And here's a hint for you. If the text has both first and third person pronouns, we always go with first person. So dialogue is when characters speak. Narration is when the narrator speaks. Quotation marks separate narration from dialogue. Help, my cousin Jack said. So you'll notice the word help is in quotes there. We don't want to worry about Jack talking because then you would think, oh, Jack's a character in the story. It must be first person. No, it says, my cousin Jack said. The person is in the character. The person in the story is talking about their cousin Jack. My cousin Jack. It's about the narrator who is telling the story. We're not looking at dialogue. We do not care what the characters say. It's only the narrator's voice. So we're not looking at dialogue. So we're trying to figure out the narrator's viewpoint on the story. So again, let's look at the pronouns. First person, I, me, mine, we, us, ours. Third person, he, she, her, they, them. Also characters' names. Okay, one more time. First person, you are telling a story about yourself. The author is telling a story about themselves. Third person, you tell a story about someone else. The author is telling a story about someone else. Once again, read the passage, cross out the dialogue, focus on the pronouns. So let's just check for understanding really quickly. Pause this video. What is the difference between first and third person point of view? Pause this video and make sure that you are writing your answer or typing it. One more time, here's a look at our anchor chart. Okay, and these charts are things that you can always go back to if you need help. So let's take a look at an excerpt from Marisol McDonald. Who's the character in the story? Is the narrator a character in the story or the author? What signal words here help us? So let's take a look. My name is Marisol McDonald and I don't match. At least that's what everyone tells me. Well, if we look here, I don't see any quotes, so I know that the author is speaking. And if we look here, I'm going to go to insert shape. I notice some pronouns here. My, okay. My name is Marisol McDonald and I don't match. So I'm going to put a box around I. At least that's what everyone tells me. So what I can see here is that the narrator is the one speaking. Marisol is the one speaking, okay? And she is the one narrating the story. She is telling a story about herself. So I can understand that this would be first person point of view. She is telling the story, not the author. It does not say her name is Marisol McDonald and she doesn't match. At least that's what everyone tells her. No, she is the one speaking. So let's look at this excerpt here. How do Marisol and Tato feel differently about not matching? What signal words help us here? So we can see here some quotation marks here. That means that someone is speaking. And I'm going to show you an example here. It says, I play soccer with my cousin Tato, and he says, Marisol, your skin is brown like mine, but your hair is the color of carrots. You don't match. So you'll notice the word mine here, and that's Tato speaking, but he's not the character in the story telling it. And Marisol is the one telling it. Actually, my hair is the color of fire, I say, and kick the ball over to Tato's head and into the goal. So remember that trick I said to you before, that if you see first and third person clues, that you always go with first person, because it says he says, Tato says. She's talking about Tato, okay? So it's still first person point of view. Some other questions here for you to think about. If Marisol was not the one telling the story, do you think we would know as much about her as we do? Each character has a different point of view in the story, and you are hearing Marisol's side of things. So what is your point of view? Do you agree with Marisol or Tato? So as you read independently today, you're going to pay extra close attention to the words the characters use. And always go back into this video, look at the clues, look at the tips to help you with point of view.